about all the time. So I'm going to hand it over to Rick to get us started. Rick?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Jim, for it in a great way. I am looking very forward to the opportunity to the library next month, so try not to miss that if you get an opportunity. But the topic we're talking about today is one, as James said, we get asked about all the time. And there's like an infinite number of ways to define photo scanning workflows. We've come up with 4 tips that we think really work and can be helpful to you, whether you're just starting out or whether you've been at it quite a while and you want to take just a moment of serious reflection on how you might want to improve or enhance your workflow. But before we do that, I'd like to remind you that this is Pink Month, Sir Awareness. Easy Photo Scan is the IO-Track family of services, and one of those is our Mammalogics division. And for 20 years, we've been helping facilities around the country stay accredited with the Food and Drug Administration's requirements, mammography quality standards. And so we work alongside all over the country that provide breast imaging services. And when October rolls around, we always want to take a moment to remind we know that the fact is 1 in 8 women in the United States will be diagnosed with breast cancer. And if the best way to deal with that is to detect the disease early, it can be a life-saving decision. We encourage you to get facts and make sure that your mothers and sisters and daughters and aunts and cousins and wives and friends, and if you're a woman, you yourself think pink and you make a plan and then you do it. Check out the nationalbreastcancer.org website. They've got all sorts of tools there. And one last thing, every year we pick an organization that's engaged in the fight against breast cancer, and we make a corporate donation on behalf of all of our employees and our clients, including our Easy Photo Scan clients, and we've done that this year. So let's not give up on hope in finding a cure to bring this disease to an end. I am Rick Lippert. I own Easy Photo Scan, and we want to welcome you to our Easy Photo Scan webinar series. We do this because we simply love to help folks unlock the power of their printed photographs with scanning. But today, I have a very special guest and an expert in her own right. I'm honored to have today with us MOLLIE BARTELT, who is the co-founder of Pixology, and they have organization that does photo organizing all over the country with licensees. She's a bundle of energy. She's going to be a lot of fun. She's just going to tell me some stories, and she's going to share with those in a few moments. She's not only a photo organizer, she's a business owner, and I think her LinkedIn page says it best about MOLLIE, that she's a mission-driven entrepreneur. She writes a lot, and she has a blog. My favorite post on that blog is "Sort Photos, ? Pass me a Xanax, ! And I think if you've been in this business or gotten involved, you understand that and why. The other has just completed her first printed publication entitled A Simple Guide to Saving Your Photos, Organizing and Printing Photos Once and for All. It's available on Amazon. I picked up a copy the other day, got it, and I'll tell you, it's got stuff in there for the neophyte all the way up to seasoned professionals. So MOLLIE, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me on. Glad to be here.
The good news is not only that MOLLIE is with us, the better news may be that we're giving away 3 copies of her book to 3 different individuals. So be sure to stay online at the end, and you're going to find out how to win that book. And if you're not fortunate enough to win, go to Amazon, pick it up. You will not regret it, I promise. So scanning printed photos is the best way to unleash the power of magical moments inside those photos and the memories that they represent. And while you read all sorts of things about scanning photos and access to all sorts of different kinds of scanning equipment, like the Kodak picture saving scanning systems we offer here at Easy Photo Scan, another underlying component that doesn't get the attention that it should, and that is the component of workflow. Now, I'm going to give you just a little disclaimer before we dive in and spend our time together. We're going to look at workflow from a photo scanning aspect, and I'll tell you, I understand photo organizing business. You're going to get all sorts of different other processes that link together to make the overall from the start to the finished process. And we may touch on some of those as we go along, but we're going to try to limit the scope of this presentation more towards the steps in the photo scanning process. And we're going to do it by introducing 4 tips that we believe will help us tackle your questions. And then Mollie's going to come on and help us answer any other questions you might have. So before we get started, let's first of all look at getting on the same page as far as a definition. Here at Easy Photo Scan, we define workflow as the execution of business processes as work passes from one action to another using a set of procedural rules, something that we can follow. Now we think of also workflow management, which takes different workflows and helps coordinate them as tasks between steps and the people that you have to synchronize the information and the images between all the different systems. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important for a couple of reasons. One, it will help keep you sane in this kind of crazy business you run into once in a while of trying to get things mess into some sort of order, but it also will improve your efficiency, your responsiveness, and the profitability of your organization. Now, there's a lot of people that won't dispute the need for workflow, and it's very likely that in your heart of hearts, if you've been involved in photo scanning, you have a pretty good idea of what the solution might look like and what it could do. However, we found that it's usually seeing workflows in action and understanding their benefits that help people recognize that workflow is more than just a tool of efficiency, but can actually be a tool to define your business. Now, when you develop workflow, there's some challenges. Someone has said workflow is kind of like planning the world's largest reception, and you take into consideration all the plates and the glasses and the invitations and the hors d'oeuvres and the beverages and other details that you have to deal with. Well, photo scanning and photo organization is just exactly like that. It mandates, though, when you deal with workflow, to view it, the whole process holistically, yet act with a singular precision. Workflow operates in such a way that you kind of create a foundation on top of all the different tasks and business activities. It's like a blanket that wraps around you that keeps you warm and feeling secure, and as a result, you can view, operate, manage, and analyze and improve your business in so many different dramatic ways. And if you're not in a business and you're just trying to get your own projects done, do that as well. It's very likely you've got that sense about it, but where do you go from here? Well, first you need to come to the realization that a photo scanning project is somewhat unique and special. It's individualized. And if you don't believe that, just ask your client, your family member, or whoever you're scanning for. They'll tell you how special their stuff is. And in and around Easy Photo Scan in our office, we have a saying. And we have scanned millions of content-sensitive documents and treasure documents and photos, but we still keep the saying close to our heart that says, when you have seen one scanning job, you've seen one. because everyone has its own kind of nuances and quirks and challenges and also its rewards. So the information that we're going to offer you today needs to be used as a reference point to get you an understanding of how workflows operate in general. And then you can establish your own individual standing workflow that ultimately is designed for the processes that you need in your practice and in your projects that best meet you. So with that said, can you really create a workflow project process in photo scanning? Well, I'll put it to you this way. If you don't, you are just going to be swimming upstream. And if you look at the most successful project coordinators for photo scanning, they all have some sort of process in place. Now, getting started really means stepping back and trying to look at things from a different set of lenses. While planning for and anticipating all those minute details is super critical in developing your workflow process, it's best if you start with that singularity of focus. Now, what do I mean by that? You start by literally drawing a straight line with the key steps in the process, and you go and you ask yourself, what happens next? I start, I then do this, and then what's supposed to happen next, and I do that, and literally just at a very high level. Because just like an outline, if you're writing a paper or a school thesis, you start at the very high level and you can come back and start filling in all the smaller details. Some of those other types of workflows that you will want to put together and manage as you need them in your process. So today, we're going to introduce you to our 4 tips. And we've brought along a few props to help us. Our props are cockpits, levers, Rolex watches, and swans. Now, no, I haven't gone off my rocker. Just hang on a minute, and you'll totally understand how these all work. Tip number 1. So if you have ever been on an airplane, flown commercially, as you were boarding, deplaning, you may have looked off into the cockpit of the airplane. You may even fly and pilot yourself. No matter whether you're the passenger or the pilot, it's undeniable that cockpits are the epitome of singular focus. They are workspace design extraordinaire. In order to defy gravity, jump in a metal tube, put some appendages on them called wings, bolt them, and take off, you've got to have controls. There's controls for everything. There's fuel controls and hydraulics and electronics, and you've got the bleed air stuff, and you've got the oxygen, the navigation, the radios. You get the point. There's a lot of stuff there, hundreds and hundreds of knobs and dials. And so the first tip when you're designing your workflow is to try to think like the engineers at Lockheed or Boeing and control your workspace by carefully laying out things in a strategically placed arrangement and in your environment. Doing so will go a long way in ensuring that you minimize unnecessary and redundant steps by bringing things all into close proximity. Just imagine if the pilot had to get the hydraulics to lift the tires of the airplane off after takeoff. They had to get out of his seat and walk up to the back of the area to do it. They don't. Everything's right at their fingertips. So it's important to understand that the nature of the type of photo digitization you provide and the work that you do goes towards developing a good designed workspace. And to do that, you need to think about organizational structure. And when I talk about organizational structure, I talk about it from a standpoint of how do you get the stuff? How does it come? Literally, how does it come? How do you drag it in? Do you get it from the, how do you get your stuff? Where do you do it? How does the process of prep work? Where do we transfer it? Where do I scan? How are my scanners organized? Where do I clean things? Where do I process them afterwards? Where do they go? It's so important, and especially if you work remotely at the client's location. Just imagine having an organizational structure that when you walk into a client's office or a client's location, you sit down with them and you say, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here, this is how many feet I need of space to work, and that just exudes confidence, and that's a workflow process. Now, we put it into action in a couple of different ways, and there are so many different examples. I'm not going to be able to cover all of them at the question sessions. We will be happy to contribute as much information as we can. But how do we put this part of it into action? Well, actually, we had a number of years ago a time and motion engineer come study our workflow process. And up in the left is a little bit about how it worked. We started off strong and we had the steps, but what happened was we started crisscrossing paths, and we noticed that the work just went all over the place. And we learned some tools that will help us. There's all sorts of different ways to organize your work. You're going to find what works for you as well as accommodates your space. But there's things like linear flow, where things move across in a kind of a straight line. There's a model where things kind of move around an area. There's a spoken hub where you've got a central control and then you go back and forth from the central control. And there's not a right or wrong way to do it. It's just that what you want to do is not wind up like that pilot seatbelt and fit to click that. You need it right. Now, with old boxes and plastic tubs, and it just comes in all sorts of different things. Sometimes they just drag it in, literally garbage bags, and the paper bag type of thing you get from a grocery store. And we realized that, you know, for us to be efficient and to work, we needed something more standardized. So we went to colored totes. The totes help us to organize our work. The other thing was we realized that we could get everything ready to go and we could get all scanned, but then where do we put it afterwards to keep it in some sort of order? And thus we came up with buying glassine bags. We buy them from Uline just like this. They're not that expensive, and they go and they last a long time. The bags obviously go back to the customers, but you buy them in 1,000 lots and they're not very expensive. And that helped us so that everything was the same in our process. And then we used the infamous commercial kitchen bun pan sheet, and I will tell you, I was at a Krispy Kreme donut where I invented this idea, and I was watching them literally hundreds of donuts on this tray. I said, man, that's amazing. And then I realized, well, you know, we could actually use that at work. We have these adjustable trays. They fit in the bins. You can get a couple of bins on each level, and we can accommodate 10, 12 different jobs, depending on their size, on that tray and that cart. And it takes just a very, very small space and rolls around so that it can be mobile. So that's one way of using space. And I'm sure all of you have got something, but here's something that you want to think about. When you think about space design, that a cluttered workspace creates a cluttered headspace. And the way to increase your productivity and creativity is just live in that environment. So the way you decrease it is you create an uncluttered space and an uncluttered headspace, and keep in mind light. Remember your desk. If you don't use it, question its existence, and function is equal to form. Now, there's a great little website called space.info, and I would encourage you, if you're interested, to jump on there. They've got some little worksheets and things that will give you some other ideas about designing your space. So let's go to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is about levers. If you aren't a big physics person, you'll appreciate that levers are something we use all the time. They were invented by a guy by the name of Archimedes, and he's the same guy that figured out how when you sit in the bathtub, you displace as much water or volume as you are. And while as cool as that is, the law of the lever is simply amazing, because what it says is if you take a lever in the fulcrum, you can amplify its input. So much so that this is the statement that he came up with. He said, give me a place to stand on Earth and I will be able to move the Earth. And what that is really a realization that there is no limit to the amount of force amplification that can be achieved if you use a mechanical advantage of the fulcrum. So our second tip is to collect the proper work tools to use in amplifying your efforts. Now, knowing how to take advantage of the right tools to amplify the input will streamline your workflow and how it processes through. But getting the right tools isn't everything. You need to stop and learn how to use them. Doing so can literally eliminate hours of efforts in your process and work flowing through your systems. And if you didn't get the opportunity last month in our webinar, we went all through a whole bunch of different photo scanning tools, and that might be a good way to get you thinking about some of the things that you may want to put into your workflow. You'll find it on our YouTube channel on youtube.com/easyphotoscan. We also have a link to it in our website on our blog. So take a few moments and look at that. As a quick reminder, we're going to just look at some of the classifications of photo scanning tools and how we describe them there. And you can learn more if you go to that webinar. But we divided them up into handling things. Those are the things that you actually touch, grasp, move the photos with. Environmental things to help keep your area clean and dust-free and a nice environment where you're not introducing artifacts onto your photographs. And then finally, support tools. And those kinds of support tools can range from both kind of tools to software types of tools. So take a look at that. And how do we put this into action? Well, there's so many different tools that are available, and I'm sure you've got a number of ones that you use as well. But I'm going to take one example, having been in the business for a couple of years now. And we're going to look at this process that scanners that we work with, automatic document feeder, and proof photos that you felt comfortable you could put into automatic document feeder, and then you have to figure out a way to merge them all together and get them all synced up. With this combination, this lever, we were able to significantly reduce our turnaround time, our production time, our workflow process. So those are the kinds of things that you're looking for when you're dealing with your work tools. So now we're going to go from levers to Rolex watches. Our third tip is what Forbes has ranked as the world's most powerful global brands, Rolex. They've been from the highest place with Sir Hillary as he climbed Mount Everest to some of the lowest places when they went and explored the Mariana Trench, like 30,000, 36,000 feet under the sea. But the reason we bring up Rolex is because its ability to bring innovation to the way things work. Let me explain. Watches have been around for 500 years. But it's the Rolex watch that was the first waterproof watch. It's the Rolex company that came out with the first automatically changing date. It's the Rolex watch that was the first waterproof to go to 330 feet. It's the Rolex watch that had 2 time zones in it. It was the Rolex watch that first changed the day and the date. And it was the Rolex watch that earned the first chronometer certification so that it becomes a standard for timekeeping. there had been watches for a long, long time before, but by having a singularity of focus, this company took innovation and disrupted the industry by improving the processes of timekeeping. So how does that kind of apply to you? Well, when you bring into your work processes and into developing your workflows, you're going to run into, hang on to it, a number of failures. They didn't achieve all of that success without having a few duds along the way. And you're also going to run into a situation where you have a blocks and you're adding this and this, and you go, when is this going to stop? How am I going to improve on this? How am I going to get this done? And you don't really have a roadmap to tell you how many of those blocks you'll need to complete to get your workflow process straightened out. Well, there's a guy that is the co-founder of Paradigm Projects, and he came up with 5 basic kind of thoughts about innovation. And one is to make innovation a core value. Continually use it as a mission in your processes as you work through it. It allows you to think creatively. It allows you to take on these challenges and not be inundated with fear and trepidation that I'm not going to be able to do it. Just say, we'll find a way, and we'll come up with a way. The other is, with innovation, is to provide, but be sure you accept the fact that you're going to be surprised. And oh, brother, can you be surprised? You take these projects on and you open them up and you go, what in the world did I run into? Allow time to innovate. A lot of times we get into our processes and we go, okay, I got to get this project done and I got to go. And we don't stop and think about what we're really kind of doing and raise above to that straight line and go, what's supposed to happen next? What's supposed to happen next? And if we did, we wouldn't have all these little eddy currents of unproductivity going on, and we'd stay more on focus, and our workflow processes would. We need to stay disciplined, and we'll talk a little bit about that more in a few minutes. And we also need to empower the innovators. Look around you. You have a group of people around you, no matter who you are, whether you're a solo entrepreneur or you've got a big business. And look to those people and ask questions of how can I innovate? What I've got this problem. Remember, some of the best ideas come from things that aren't even related whatsoever to your specific industry that can be adopted, i.e. a donut tray. So how do we put this into action? Well, we have actually gone through a number of iterations, and it's been a long road, and I won't tell you we're there at the end yet. But we have a number of different tools. We've made each one of these tools available to you in a handout. They're free for you to use and have and keep and share. These tools look at some of the very basics of what I consider are the fundamentals of workflow in photo scanning. The first is the order form, the part where you interact with your client and receive things from them. We've kept it pretty simple. It's a 2-sided form. There's a part on the front that's got a little disclaimer and some information on it, as well as a kind of a very brief, high-level description of what we're taking, and a receipt on the back that's got a replication of exactly what they signed for them. And if you turn the form over on the back when you open up your file, you'll see there's a whole tools office-only type of place for us to make notes and conversations and deal with it this way. You know, we've thought about going to an electronic form, but because we go mobile and we do a lot of events, these actually, from our perspective, paper forms are working very well for us, and we actually then scan them and digitize them. The next is a workflow consideration form, and this thing is 5 pages long, single line. It's just filled with each one like that, and it's just full of things that you'll want to consider as you're going through and what types of things you're going to need to think about when you're developing your workflow for completing the project. It's going to look at materials and your scanning and your digitization services, how you're going to provide them. It's going to look at metadata and photo handling considerations, your input types of considerations, the media, the modes, the media sizes, the thicknesses, the scanning technologies that you're going to use, the optical resolution, the bit depth, the rotations, the number of passes, the scanning illumination, and on and on and on. And we invite you to take that, study it, take what you want from it if you'd like, and then you can trash the rest if it's not applicable. But the whole concept is to take a look at it and then develop how you flow through the process. But to keep things simple, this middle sheet is our straight line. If you'll see, there's 6 steps for us. We prep the work, we scan the work, we repack the stuff, we get it up digitally to them, and then we also create some sort of media. That's it. And it's a simple process for us. We invite you to take a look at that and keep a straight line. There's all these other considerations, but this is our straight line with the minimum high level so that we keep focus and keep that singularity of focus going as we go through the process. So that brings us to our 4th and final creation tip, and we're using swans. Now, swans are beautiful waterfowl. They happen to be one of the largest and the fastest swimming, and they live a long time. They fly just thousands and thousands of miles and traverse all over the country in gracing us with their tranquil, serene, peaceful look. However, if you were to ever study the anatomy of a swan, you go, how does this thing actually really work? In the natural, this bird looks like it would have some serious issues. Because if you look at it, you've got a beautiful body, and you've got these 2 little legs that are not even centered underneath them. They're in the back, so that means I'm going to waddle when I walk. But those legs are the secret power of that swan in so many different ways, especially when it's swimming. Its web feet spread out really big so that you have this extensive surface area. So if they're standing with that weight in mud and that type of thing, they don't sink. If they're out in the water, it pulls tremendous amounts of water through at a rapid rate as they're swimming. So here you've got this big, beautiful swan gracefully flying across the water, and those feet just going like crazy underneath. So our 4th tip is beauty with a propelling force. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is really following up a little bit more about form following function. Staying graceful with your workflow. Although you're working really busily, remember that there's a whole bunch of other parts to it. And so that you appear organized with your workflow, you gracefully float along through your project with your clients, and then, meanwhile, you're paddling like crazy underneath. Now, for us, when we put this into action, it's kind of an interesting situation, and I don't know if you've ever run into this. You got your space design, you got your tools, we go through all of our forms, we got everything, we got our process, we know what we're going to do, and bam! You find yourself under pressure. You know, you encounter something you didn't expect, and now all of a sudden you got to work till 3 o'clock in the morning to get the project done, and you know, all of a sudden your workflow falls apart because you're falling apart. Well, don't despair is the first thing. The more we ingrain workflow into us, the more we practice it, the better we're going to be. And that's why we come up with these tips. One is to stage like a mental dress rehearsal. It helps in your workflow. Think through the process. Imagine what's supposed to happen next and what's supposed to happen next. Try to draw as straight of a line as you can, and then those parts of those little eddy currents start to fall away. Address the urgent needs first. Remember to stop and take a breather and step back. Now we have the luxury here of having a number of folks that work here in our organization, so we can actually, ask somebody to kind of come over and take a look at the job, and they go, well, what about this and this? Oh man, we forgot about that because we're so under pressure and to get something done. Use the power of a group mind, and everybody's got somebody that they can rely on, and use those people to get a second opinion or a third opinion. And then, of course, block out the necessary and focus, or the unnecessary and focus on the necessary. So how do we do? Well, we've got all four of them here. We've got our space design and our workflow tools and our processes and our propelling. And you say, well, how do you guys handle it? And we handle it this way. There's a lake in downtown Orlando called Lake Eola. It's actually got a fountain in it. And, I would tell you that we are a works in progress in the Swan department. We may have some of the other parts done, but just like these boats, we're a little hard-shelled and have a little bit of problems getting around sometimes because we always expect the unexpected, but I do encourage you to take a look at staying afloat and doing your dead level best as we go along and taking into consideration all these various considerations of workflow. So Molly, are you there?
I sure am.
So Molly, tell us a little bit about your workflow that you do there at your organization. And you were telling a story that was just pretty awesome a few minutes ago. I'll let you.
Sure. We definitely have a client order form that has basic steps on there that we talk about right up front with our client. We ask them different questions about what they need for us to do in terms of sorting their pictures and then scanning them, and then how we will be returning the pictures to them. We also have on our order form a deadline, and we list notes about some of the preferences that they have. So that client order form is really important to our process because we'll come back to it to just clarify and remember what our client had requested. Once we have the order form completed and we have the pictures and the boxes or envelopes or whatever the project is, we put into process our client project checklist. And it's similar to yours. We have different check-offs on ours, but one of the things we love to do is a day later after receiving the project from a client is we review the whole project again just to make sure that we have quoted the project correctly. Sometimes we'll notice things, unusual parts of a section of pictures that might end up costing the client more if we were to, scan them properly. So if there's something that really stands out as unusual, we'll call the client right back. And we actually tell them that when they place their order is we will be looking this over in the next day or two. If there's something unusual, we'll be giving you a call back. But our quote's based, on when we meet them. And if we need to adjust it, we try to let them know within the next day or two so that there's no surprises. And then our project checklist kind of walks through doing the work of organizing the photos if necessary, scanning the pictures, and then we do a second, what we call assessment, just to make sure that our quality of a project is adequate. So we actually try to have not the same person who did the scanning do the quality check, so there's two eyes on it. And then we contact the client to let them know that their project is ready. And we don't just say it's ready for you to pick up. We actually tell them it's ready for you to come and review. That way, if they are concerned with the quality of how something turned out, they aren't, we haven't given them the expectation, well, this is it and you're taking it. They're given the expectation that they need to let us know we've done the work to their level of satisfaction. So when they come in, we review it, and if they're happy with the project, then they finish paying because we ask for just half down when a person places an order. When they come in and they've approved it and we have copied the files to whatever media they want to have, they'll finish their payment. And then our project checklist also includes follow-up. So we try to give a call within a week or two to make sure that they were happy with the work that we did for them, and we send a thank you note. So that's all the pieces that are a part of our client project checklist. And it does change. I agree with you, Rick. We add and take away from it as we see, you know, that some of the check marks are necessary or missing. So that's our checklist. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, Molly. And so you kind of explained what we consider straight line through the process. What's supposed to happen next? What's supposed to happen next? Do you have any examples of kind of more that's from a workflow management standpoint, some of those other workflows that coordinate with that as you're moving it through the process? An example of when you encounter something that maybe you weren't expecting or that type of thing, or if you go mobile.
You know, actually, it's funny that we're having this webinar today because, like, just 2 hours ago, we were working on a project for a local historical bed and breakfast business, and they had delivered pictures that were loose in a plastic bag, and then pictures that were in an old magnetic album. And our expectation with the client was that we would be able to simply scan the pictures that were loose easily with our high-speed scanner, and then to scan the photo album pages using the A3 so that we could have our photo selector just pull the images off the pages for the client. I actually posted on Twitter a picture of this. If you go to Pixology's Twitter account, you can see a picture of it. It's just that it was that interesting. What happened is the pictures that were in the magnetic album, when we scanned them with our flatbed, they were warped. The pages were warped, and so it was causing this kind of spooky glare onto the pictures. And actually, being Halloween, we really had a good laugh over it. But we needed to figure out what to do because this wouldn't be a good reflection of the business's rooms. We needed to get a good scan. So our first step was to figure out, well, could we get a better scan using a different scanner? So we grabbed our FlipPal mobile scanner and scanned it on that, and the scan was much better. There was no ghost in the picture. So at this point, well, for us to scan with that FlipPal takes us considerable amount of time compared to the high speed or even the flatbed, because we then have to go back, take the image off of the camera card, crop it, and get it in line with the other pictures of the project. So I had to call the client and say, you know what, we're really noticing that our scans are not coming out right on our flatbed, our large flatbed scanner. And I said, if you could, if I could send you a picture, you could actually see how the ghosts seem to appear. So I took a picture of the computer screen, which was showing the two comparisons of the scans, and she could see that. And then I asked her, I said, if you want us to use the FlipPal on all of the pictures, we'd be happy to do that. But we couldn't just do one, you know, if one picture wasn't turning out on the flatbed and then switch to the FlipPal, it'd just be crazy going back and forth. So the client understood that, and I told her, if you want us to use the FlipPal, that's great. We're happy to do that, but it will cost 89 cents a scan versus the 29 cents that we had quoted her. So She is actually going to come and look at her magnetic album and make a decision on which pictures she wants us for sure to scan. There's a few hundred pictures in there, so it could save her some significant amount of money, and it's going to save us a lot of time, just by pausing our workflow to contact the client and get feedback. If we're upfront with them, they will appreciate that, and we won't be frustrated at the end of the day when we're doing more work that we hadn't intended.
Molly, that's so true, and you bring up a very good point. We find on our practice that if you can disrupt your flow as quickly as you run into something, and so by having these kind of guidelines and what you're working towards, this workflow process, and then if you find something that you kind of put the brakes on, try to get there as quickly as possible rather than just make an arbitrary decision, well, I just did this, like it, and they want to go back. Well, we could find out how to do this a different way. And so you've done things needlessly. Kind of stop it at the beginning if you can. Contact the client and do exactly what you're doing. It also helps you to define your business. Wow, these guys know what they're doing. And they've run into a problem and they've let me know. So we've had a great time here with you, but you've got some questions maybe. So is James, are you there?
I am, and I do have a few questions that came through. The first one was about the glassine bags. What sizes do we use? How do we use them?
So the way we work that's a great question, and I don't know, Molly, let me ask Molly first. I know what we do. What do you do when they bring a trash bag of stuff, and do you try to organize the photos on the back end, or?
Well, we ask the client right off the bat what they want us to do, because scanning pictures that aren't organized, I think does a disservice if we have not asked the client what their end vision is for their pictures. So we ask them right off the bat. And some people don't care what order they get them back in, and some people do. And if they do, we've had people actually organize the pictures for us before they leave their pictures with us. Others don't care, and we did our job letting them know it could have been organized if they wished.
And for us, we don't want to return. If you bring me a garbage bag, I'm not going to return your pictures in a garbage bag. So one of the things that we do is we do use these glassine bags. They're approved. They're safe. We actually find that their largest size, I think, is something like a 12 by 14 or something like that. We buy those, and we can put everything in them. When we used to do a lot more of the scanning services than we do now, as we've kind of graduated more towards different kinds of projects in our business. And we used to do kind of the walk-in, bring me 100 pictures, we'll scan them type of thing. We would use a smaller glassine bag. It makes it very nice to return them. The customer loves it. Things are all, wow, this is the mess that I gave you, and you put them in here. The reason we came up with that, though, is for self-preservation, to be really blunt with you. They give you this box or whatever, and you got to come up with some sort of organization just so that when you're going through the scanning process. So that's what we do with the glassine bags. We have a tendency to order two sizes. I'm not exactly sure. One's about 4 inches wide and maybe 8 inches tall, and then we get the biggest one, and I think it's like 13 inches by something. And that works out very well for us. Now, will you find things that won't fit in that? You betcha. But that handles most of the kinds of projects that we do.
Okay, and then I have another question here. It's when you have photos of various sizes, do you organize into size first? And also, what's the largest picture you scan with the Easy Photo Scan scanner?
Wow, that's a good one. So no, you don't have to organize them by size. In fact, that's kind of the beauty of what we do, is that you can keep them in the order the client. I mean, I'm with Molly. We always like to ask. One of the first things we always ask when we get in a job is say, what do you plan on doing with these? It's like kind of in our workflow. That's almost like second nature to everybody. Well, what are you thinking about doing? And I think from that perspective, we get a pretty good idea, like you do, Molly, of kind of what their intentions are, and you can help guide them if you can use your expertise in that way. But we keep them in the order that the client would like them. We do not worry about mixing sizes. It's perfectly fine to put the mixed sizes in there. The scan, I talk first of all, if you're using the automatic scanner, I think anything kind of less than the wallet size, those ones when I was a kid and went to school and you'd put them in your wallet. No one has a wallet now. They all carry their stuff on a mobile phone, but you'd put them in that size. I think they're like 2.5 by maybe 3 inches tall. Those might be a little too small to go through, but anything 3 by 3 and onward will go through. Now we've actually scanned up to 32 inches long, 8.5 by 32 inches long in the document scanner. It's those panoramic types of views. If you have that situation and you want us to work with you, we'll show you how to do it. It's a pretty simple little setting. You don't actually do it in the Picture Saver software. You actually use the Smart Touch tool. And then, of course, we have the A3s, which will scan up to 18 inches long and a full 12 inches wide. So that's where we wind up doing our albums. I don't know. How about you? We also have a big old flat scanner that will scan things 42 inches wide, but that's a different story. How about you, Molly?
Occasionally, we have very large portraits that come in or landscape photos that have been blown up. I know 26 by or 24 by 36 is something we see pretty often, and we use our A3 and then we stitch it together.
Okay, so hopefully that answers that question.
Okay, and then we also have, do we have any pictures of our workspace?
Hey, that's a great thing. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll post them up and show you. We use more of the concentric model, even in the areas where we process like our rentals and we clean up scanners and that type of thing. Everything is literally, you can sit in a rotating chair and literally have things from 1, 2, 3 all in a row. I will make a note of that, and we will make sure that in the link to the web page that we put up on our site that has all the information and these handouts, that we put some pictures of what we do. Hey, Molly, can we borrow you to maybe send a few pictures of yours?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we'll get some of Pixology. They kind of use the same thing. A lot of table space. I think that's one of the things that when you design your workflow, we have a concentric, we have kind of a U type of shape, and kind of office space on the right for doing administrative types of things, and then our workflow literally just starts just from the left to the right. So it kind of works that way.
And then last but not least, we were talking about the A3s. Is there a way to stitch together large scans done on the A3 within the software? I'm guessing they're talking about the Kodak software.
Yeah, so no, there's not. To do the automatic stitching, and I think that brings up something else that we spoke about in the tools last time. And you know, so there's a lot of different softwares and applications and tools that you can use that are available. That tool does not stitch for you because some people have different recommendations and they have different requirements for stitching. And we happen to use Photoshop. And you can automate the stitching process. We have it to one click. So that's kind of where we're at that point. It's kind of the most effective workflow tool for us in that particular instance. I think that's another example of having, you know, you got all these tools and you find the right tool for the job that you want to do. I'll be really blunt. When we do our workflow process for scanning pictures, we use the Kodak picture saving scanning software to help us get them in and do that job of digitization. But we actually then use Lightroom because there's bulk actions we can do. So we always have a process. Every photo, we don't care if it's left or right, but every photograph that's in a landscape position and it's like an 8 by 10, everybody scans with them in the same direction. So you just literally highlight them all and flip them all at one time. We the pictures at the same time in case there's writing on them, and then we'll just highlight them all and delete them in a bulk action. So there's a couple of things that we do from our process that helps us to add value to the client, and it doesn't cause us a whole lot of extra time, and we use the tools to do it.
I think that just about does it for the questions, unless there's some things our presenters would like to add.
Well, Molly, thank you so much for being here with us. We really enjoyed reading your book, and I learned quite a few things. I appreciate everybody else joining us today. We look forward to you answering any questions that you might have. Please feel free. There's a link to connect with us on that as well. Take a look at these forms and start working through and using these 4 tips of cockpits and levers and Rolex watches and swans to start looking at your workflow maybe a little differently than you did before you had the presentation here today. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you.